take too long. So on screen one here, show you, of course, the introduction. And what we call it here is the gatekeeper. The reason why we call it the gatekeeper because nothing can get into SkyBridge unless it is has the compliance rule table populated. Okay, so that's the gatekeeper. It won't let anything in the SkyBridge. Now, meaning that in the compliance rule table, you have to populate the group, the regulation, the class, the chemical state, and the initial rule. Whatever's on the component, it has to match what's in the compliance rule table. And I know many of you have gotten that initial rule missing. This other screenshot here is going to show you. Now, this is on the component. So on the component here, before I can get this information in, now, one good thing about this is that when you add a component, SkyBridge will add the group because it knows the group right here, storage. It will add the regulation because it knows the regulation that you put on it. It knows the class. This is the component coming off the component. This is the class, and it knows the chemical state. What it does not know, or what it does not make a choice for you, is the initial rule here. You have to pick that yourself. You can do that initially, and this is kind of like the most time consuming table there is, but to populate. But for the most part, once you get it done, you don't have to do it anymore. This is for new components or when you add a new rule, you have to populate this table here. Okay? So again, it all has to match. So I'll put storage here in the compliance group. I'll put the regulation. I'll put the class, the chemical state like liquid. And of course, these are the rules already here. So I can add this. If I already know the rules that I want to use, the rule definition, I would put it in here. Okay. Now, also here too, I have the compliance group, the regulation, the class, the chemical state, and again, starting regulation for new components or new regulation that you add to components here. And what regulation you want to put on it, if you notice here, I have multiple choices here. So which one I want to put on it? Well, I want to put on the starting regulation, which is 1, and that's the monthly, because uh, this regulation requires 2 consecutive months and then it goes quarterly. So I don't want to put the third rule on here to start with. I don't want to put that on there, right? Because it's going to start monitoring every quarter. So I want to go through the progression. So I put number 1 here in this section. And now SkyBridge is going to schedule that valve for the first month. And then, of course, the regulation is going to take over after that because it knows once I monitor that month, the next regulation is going to transfer to the next regulation, which is 2. And then once I do the second regulation or the second monthly, it's going to go to the third rule. So, but all I need to do on this table is put the first rule that I'm going to start using with. And that's with everything. Now, the valves is the one that has a lot of choices. A lot of times the connectors and the pumps, there's not too many regulations, maybe 1 or 2 regulations you have to pick from. But you can look at the frequency of those. Okay. On this table too, as you notice, it has the preferred dates here. Now, your frequency of monitoring has to be first month of the annual, first month of the quarter, first month of semi-annual for this table to work, right? If it's just quarterly, it doesn't look at this table. If it's just annual, it doesn't look at this table. So quarterly skip 1, quarterly skip 3, frequency of monitoring. Then when you had these as a frequency on the rule definition, that's when it starts to look at this table, and then it picks whatever you choose here. It can be whatever you choose. Second month of the quarter will be your first month of the quarter, things like that. In addition to that, if you have multi-years, in most cases, it's connectors. You can go up to 9 years skip on a connector, but here's where you want to start. So if I go to like 4 years on the connectors, I want to put in a date where I want to start those connectors monitoring. And it will schedule it from that date 4 years in advance from there. Okay. And the last one is force rule change. In this case, I have this monthly rule, which is, it doesn't say monthly, but I know because GGGA has VLV1, is first month of the quarter. I mean, first month, second month would be two, and then third month would be quarterly. So here, for example, I have number one rule, but it's been 3 months down the road here, and this hadn't changed for whatever reason. So I can come in here, pick the rule one, and then put it on the quarterly rule, which is three. I just hit force rule change. It's going to tell me how many it's going to change, and then of course I can go ahead and make those changes, and then of course it's going to schedule that one for quarterly now. So again, if you want to change a group of components, I'll show you that here in a sec. Let's move on to SkyBridge. I'm gonna give you an example of what I'm talking about here. If I go into quarantine, okay, let me go to quarantine and I'm gonna filter for, I'm just gonna retrieve because I already have some edits in here. So I'm gonna add a regulation to the components here. Okay. So in this case, I have, show you how to fill this out. I have a GGGA rule I want to add here. But first of all, let's look at the classes that I have here that's involved. Okay, let's look at the classes. I have connector 31, 13 pumps, and I have 58 valves here. Now, when I look at the individual component here, I don't have the regulation GGG on it here. Let's see if I don't here. Yeah, I only have the 28 VHP and a custom rule. Okay, so let me go to, and I'm gonna go ahead and select. But the first thing I already do, I'm gonna do the connector manually, and then I'm gonna let SkyBridge do the pumps and the valves. So let's go to compliance rule, and of course this is unit 30. So go to compliance rule. I'm gonna hit add new, and the compliance group is unit 30. Okay. The regulation is 63, EPA 63, GGGA. The class is connector. Okay. So the chemical state is light liquid. And initial rule, here's the kicker here. So you got three options here. And whatever one, this one's heavy liquid, so that's out of the box. I don't need that one. And then I can look at here and see that this was annually, and it's doing one inspection every 4 years. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the annual rule here for the connectors, and then eventually they get to the 4 years after I monitor it. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and save that one. So that's gonna let any connector that I add with GGGA on it in this unit, and it's light liquid, it's a connector, it has to pass now to get through the gate. So I'll go ahead and save that, and I'll go back to quarantine, and I'm gonna do the same thing with the let's do the let's filter for the connectors, and we'll process them through component class. And let's just do the connectors and see if they'll go through. Okay. And we're going to retrieve that. And now we're going to add a regulation. So we got all the connectors here. Let me make sure I clicked on the edits button here. And I didn't click on it. There we go. Okay. Got edits. So here I want to select all the connectors, which is 31. Right. Make sure. Yep. And then I'm going to right click, add regulation to select it. The regulation is 66, EPA 66 GGGA. Okay. The compliance group is unit 30. And that's all I need is normal. and I'm going to go ahead and apply that. Okay. Now I can go ahead and process that through. Unhold selected, and we'll see if they'll go through. Okay. Because we added that one manually. Yes. Okay. Let's go back to the filter, and we're going to retrieve this information here. That's connectors. So they all went through because I've added a manually entered in the information to let it through the gate. Now let's go to the valve and pump here. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go ahead and retrieve, but we're not going to populate the compliance rule table. We're just going to add the rule and see what happens there. Okay, so we're going to right click, add regulation to select it. The regulation, again, EPA GGGA, the unit is 30, and normal, and apply. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and unhold, select it, yes, and then process it through. And let's go back to filter and retrieve. Okay. And you see here it says no initial rule. You got that right. You get that right sometime, right? So what it's saying is that I got the rule, but the SkyBridge doesn't know what regulation to use for the valve. It doesn't know what regulation to use for the pump. So I have to make that choice. The good thing about it, it populates most of this information. So if we go under compliance rule now, and we go to regulation name, and we're going to go to compliance group, and we're going to open up the 63 GGGA, and we're going to go to unit 30. Okay. So this is the one we done manually. So it went through. Remember those processed through. But if you notice here, it populated. Let's do the pump first. Okay. It populated all it knew it could do. Right. It saw that it had a unit 30. The regulation that I put on it was GGGA. It was a pump. Of course, they see that on the components in quarantine, and they see everything is in there as light liquid. But it can't make this call right here. You have to come in here manually, open it up, and you see all the different options you got here. So which one you're going to pick? Of course, you're going to know this by your regulations that you have, what you're subjected to. A lot of these are different. Heavy liquid here, that's out of the question. Initial monitoring, these two here may be out of the question. But this one here in light liquid service, that's just a monthly pump right here. So now when I save this, okay, you see now it populated that information. Now I can process my pumps through. Now let's go back over here and do the valves while we're over here. So we go here, and again, it populated everything it could in quarantine, but again, it can't make this call because it doesn't know which one of these to choose. So in this case, you remember we're going to start with the number 1 month. So eventually we're going to start with 1, and then the database SkyBridge is going to take over once the regulation is going to move it to 2, and then it's going to move it to the first month of the quarter. But all I have to do here is tell it where I want to start. And then I go ahead and save that. And now I can go back to quarantine now and process those components through. So I go to quarantine, test, edits, retrieve, and my message should go away, except for this one. This is something that's let's see where that's located. Let's see, just one here, and it may be a different. Let's see what it is here. I don't know why it's not going through. Let me just check it out right quick. Oh, EPA VV. So that's the one it's warning on there on that one. So let's go back and we're going to process all these. The ones that we were working with this one here. Let me just go ahead and delete that one out. That's a VV. Okay. So before we had missing initial rule on all these. Now that's all gone. We fixed that issue that we had. Now we're going to go ahead and unhold. Yes. And then process it through. So again, missing initial rule. Whenever you get that, it's best to just go into go under regulation. Let me just make sure all these are gone. Retrieve. And now all these are gone here. So if I go to filter under components here, and I'm going to go to my last filter, which is unit 30, retrieve that. I'm just going to pick a valve here and view that valve. And there's the GG rule. It's on V1. It's scheduled for this month because it's first month. And if I go back up here to the top and look at the rules at GG1, it's on the individual rule change. So if I look down here on the rule change here, see here, it's going to have when a component is found to be leaking, change the individual rule to 1 so it stays on 1. But if it moves or passed, then it goes to rule 2. So it goes to rule 2. So again, you just put the number 1 rule on in compliance rule table, and it's going to take off from there. Okay. Another thing here too with that compliance rule table is sometimes you go under, say for instance, if I go to, hopefully that made sense to you. If I go under rule sets here, and let me go to my last filter here, that's unit 30, and I'm gonna go ahead and retrieve this here. And I'm gonna group by the class. Well, I'll group by the regulation. Let's group by the regulation, and then I'm gonna group by the rule name. And I'm gonna go ahead and open up let's see what it has here. The VVA. Okay. So here I have VVA. I have 23 that are on VVA 3. See here, 3. I have 2 that's on 1 here. And if I want to force rule these 2 records here onto 3, then I would have to go, of course, to the compliance rule table and do that. And if I go, it's just the EPA VV. Yeah, A. Is that VVA? Yeah. So I go to compliance rule table now. And I'm grouped by regulation and class. And let's see what else I got here. So EPA VVA. I need the group 2. Swap that over. So here's the group. We go to VVA and unit 30. And this is the valve here. And if I go here to force rule change, I'm gonna pick 1, and I want to force them all to 3. All right, so I'm gonna force rule change here. It's going to tell me that I have 2. Remember we had 2 that were on 1, so I forced those to 3. Now when I go back to, let's see, the compliance rule table, rule sets, I'm sorry, rule sets. My last filter, retrieve. And now when I filter for, let's group by regulation, class, and let's do unit 30. Now remember I had all these were, oh, the rule name. There it is, rule. Put that one over here. See, there's the rule. So there's three now. I had two of them with one, EPA VV VL V1. Now it's three. And what you want to do, if you want to take if you want to take a look at this, what you can do is, let me see if I got one that may uh, look a little odd here. If you got some, what you do is look, if you got like maybe one EPA VLV1, that means it's on monthly, but you can always add the date, rule date added too. And that way, if you see one and the date added was, 2021, 2022, that's old, or maybe past the month date, because after a month, it should, if you add a new component, after a month, it should move to rule two. So you should see it on rule two. But if you do not see it on rule two, or you a couple months down the road here and you're still monitoring that component monthly, you can go and use that force rule and force it to the third rule, which is in this case quarterly. Okay. But that's how you would go here and look at what's outstanding or what's those that are lagging back and not changing. You can see that under here. Okay. And another thing too is when you come over here to when you add a new unit, and a lot of times that's not something that you do all the time, but when you add a new unit, right? Let me just do this right quick. X. Okay. And remember, the same name you name it here, you're going to give the same name to your compliance group. So save that regulation compliance group. The new compliance group, and then save that. Okay. So remember, whenever you want to add records here, so whatever regulation you want to add to this new unit, remember you have to go over here to the gatekeeper and authorize that to come through. So if I go here to compliance group, I'm sorry, compliance rule, I want to start adding, that new unit. I want to start putting in brand new components here. So what you can do is come over here, and before you start adding components, you're going to have connectors, you're going to have pumps, you're going to have valves. So you can come over here and add that information in here. The regulation you're going to be under, the classes that you're going to start with. So again, maybe you can start off with pump, light liquid, and then pick the rule that you want to use, right? And then you're going to save that. You're going to add a new one. And it gets kind of complicated when you start adding. You go through and put all your light liquid, then you come back, put your gas vapor, and then you come back and put your light liquid gas vapor. You come back and put your heavy liquid. Um, Sometimes if you just got light liquid gas vapor, that'll work better. Um, but light liquid gas, you got to have one for each. So in this case, I'll do my valve class. Let's do connector since we're up here. Connector, light liquid, and I just got one rule that governs connector. So it's pretty easy when you got one rule. And I'll just do my valve now. And now I've done everything here. And now when I add a new component, I can add this new rule here. Let's do val, VL. Like liquid. And fortunately, it's just one for that. That's a custom rule. Save that. And now I can add that new, start adding new components to that new unit now because I've already put that information here. So compliance group, XYZ. I got my pumps connector, so I can add pumps, I can add connectors, I can add valves. But if I add like a maybe a relief, it won't go through. Now it would add much as it can. You saw how that worked out. If I put a new unit in, I add all the information, um, add all the new information in. It's going to put in, remember, the group, the class, the chemical state, but it's not going to put the rule for you. Okay. But again, you can do that manually here or let SkyBridge populate most of this information, and then you come back in and put in the initial rule right here. You come in here and do that. That's the way I like to do it. Let quarantine take care of populating all this information for me, and then I come back and just add the initial rule. Because if it's blank, and what I like to do now, this is not a good example here, but normally when I come in here and I click up on top the initial rule, all the blanks are going to come to the top. So now most of the time in your database, it's probably just going to show the stuff that's in quarantine that do not have. Yes. I'll go ahead and record this too. I've recorded this. I'll post it for you. This is that was a question. So again, that's the gatekeeper. Again, it won't let anything in unless this is populated. And if I go to an individual component, and let's see here. I got a little time here. Go to components, and I go and save. Let me just edit it right quick. Save and make copy. And then here I'm going to change the unit name to XYZ. Right. And this is a valve. And I'm going to come down here to the regulation, edit this, change this to XYZ. And this is a new component now. Save that, edit this one, change to XYZ. Okay, save that. Now remember, these are not registered yet. So when I put them in, when I go ahead and save that and close it, it goes to quarantine, of course. But when I go to quarantine now, go to the filter and retrieve that information. And okay, so this is the new one that I added, and it says no initial rule. And remember, it's a valve, and it's an XYZ, and remember, it's in the compliance group. Okay, so what we'll do is go and look for that. The storage. So let's go to regulation, compliance rule, and that's a new component. So we go compliance group, XYZ, and here's the one here that's the 28 VHP and the VVA. I didn't do those. I did this one here, the DW. So let's go ahead and edit that one. And see, it put everything in there except the last initial rule here. It doesn't know what to do with that. So I'll do it again. First month for the EPA VVA. Save that. And then down here, 28 VHP. Let me edit that. an initial rule here. It's just one rule for that regulation. So that makes it, that's easy there. Okay. So let's go back to quarantine and put it on edit, retrieve. And now I can process all this information through. Unhold selected. Okay. And okay, and then I can process it through. And let's take a look at our new tag here. Typing it up here, 196DW. Go ahead and view. And it's our new unit. And I've got my first tag in my new unit here, XYZ group. And the unit name, of course, is XYZ. Okay. And now I can start adding my new components now. All my valves, that's the only thing I have in there right now. So I can add my connector, my pump, all that stuff for the 28 VHP and the EPA VVA. Okay. Hopefully that made a good bit of sense there for you. But remember, when you get that initial rule, missing initial rule, just come over here to regulation, compliance rule, and then just sort by, and then it's going to bring up all the empty ones to the top here. Of course, I got a lot of good example here, but you may have 2 or 3, depending on what classes you put in quarantine and what groups, of course, has to match. So you just come over here, edit, and then put in the missing compliance group. The starting tag, right? The starting regulation you want to use. All right, I have recorded this, and I'll make sure I post it on YouTube or send you the link to all the different enlightenments here. I'll make sure you get it. I got your email addresses. Okay. So again, thank you for being with us this afternoon. Really appreciate it. This was a good topic, I think. Help you out, especially when adding new stuff to the database. Okay. Well, enjoy your rest of your day. Stay safe, and I'll see you next month. Take care. Bye bye. This will end.